Right. Welcome to our next instalment of the Social Value Always Matters series. I'm here with Terence Yuen, who's joined us from the Hong Kong Institute of Social Impact Analysts, and so obviously based in Hong Kong. So thank you very much for joining us today, Terence. I should also say I'm Catherine Manning. I'm the Operations Manager for Social Value UK and Social Value International. So just to get us going, Terence, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what you do?
Yeah, I'm the founder of the Hong Kong Institute of Social Impact Analysts. So we are like a local chapter affiliated with Social Value International. And as for myself, I'm trained as an accountant. And I did a little bit of audit work for one of the big four audit company. And then, but my professional life, I spent time serving for the Community Chest of Hong Kong, which is the biggest fundraising organization in Hong Kong. Each year we raise like 200 million Hong Kong dollar, and then we distribute the donations to our member agencies. So I work there as the grant manager, and every year we receive like 200-300 funding application. It is around that time we began, or myself began to think more about how we could improve the impact of the program delivered by our social service member agencies. And I further pursue a research degree, and then I spent time as a researcher or as a consultant, helping government department or helping foundations to do social policy research or program effectiveness research. So I thought I quit accounting like 15 or 20 years ago. And then 6 years ago, when our friends in Hong Kong, they talk about how could we improve the impact of our social enterprise, of our charities. Then we talk about should we develop an institute to promote impact measurement. So it is that time that I realized maybe I'm the right person to try to do something, given my accounting background, and then given my experience in the charity sector, and then given my training in the university, and which provided me with the knowledge to undertake social research. So all these things combined together actually is what we do and what we want to promote now. And it's very happy we get a connection to Social Value International, and now we become a member of the international family of social value.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, that and definitely echoes the cross-sectoral nature of the network as a whole, you know, so that I'm combining all of those different skills, research, accounting, and the other professional backgrounds that you've got. Now, I know you've got experience beyond the Hong Kong Institute as well that would also feed into the social value movement as a whole. You were talking, you told me before about some of the collaborative work that you've done in your other roles. Could you say a little bit more about that as well?
Social Value International, so all members we see as a movement. And personally, I'm also linked to other social movement. And like one example would be I'm the co-founder of the Platform Cooperativism Consortium, which is to promote cooperatives that operate using the internet platform or the mobile platform. So we are trying to convert platform capitalism into platform cooperativism. But that is actually a bigger part of a bigger project that we would like to promote the peer-to-peer commons or the peer-to-peer commoning. So it is an alternative to state and market. We want to promote, in the past we talked about civil society, but in another way to look into the interaction would be to think about actually actors in the society would work with one another So increasingly, we are thinking about another way of organizing production through peer-to-peer and the kind of community-based production that depends on the work of the people. Of course, sometimes we interact with state and market, but it is like the third mode of production. And actually, in fact, the experience with the the COVID-19, actually, maybe I can talk a little bit in the case of Hong Kong. We had been affected by COVID-19 very early. Yeah. And in the case of Hong Kong, because of our experience of the previous SARS outbreak that happened in 2003, we had a very bad experience. And the society or the populace actually, they're very alert. And immediately, it's a bit different from your country. We use face masks for the whole population. And suddenly, it is very difficult for you to find a face mask. You can't rely on the market to find a face mask. And our government failed to find way to supply us with the face mask. So so there's actually kind of a panic for people to try to find face masks. And actually, it is through the social relationships, through your connection, and through both and the altruistic activity of some people that we managed to find way to help to both the normal citizen and also the underprivileged to try to get sufficient protection. So in a way, we are not relying on that. There's a state failure, there's the market failure, and then we are relying on the peer-to-peer mode to try to source the protective gear for the citizens.
Well, you touched on quite a few things, really important points there, Terence, and really, I mean, the purpose of this discussion is to bring out those key things that you're touching on there. And you've already sort of started to say how that obviously we're in this crisis time globally now, all being affected by that in different ways, and like you said, at different stages, right? So it's come to different places at these different times. But and you sort of touched on a couple of points of how that's affecting Hong Kong society. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? And particularly then, have there been things that you've had to change about your work? I know here in the UK, we're all working from home. So I'm at my home in Liverpool here, a number of different things have changed. But so has there been things that have changed about that and about the people that you're working with as well?
Okay, in relation to our work, we are kind of lucky. We could, do most of our work online, and we can work from home. And insofar as we have a couple of projects, consultancies that we need to work on, we had already completed the fieldwork stage. And so it's just a coincidence that we just move on to the report preparation stage, meaning actually we could work from home as long as we can, go online and we can continue to get information using the internet. So as far as our work is concerned, we are not that much affected by the pandemic or the home state order. And of course, for our institute, we will organize training from time to time. Those are physical training, and so it affected us in some way, and it made us think, or it pushed us to work faster to try to develop things like what the Social Value International has already done, or SV UK office has already done. You offer courses online, and I think this is the future direction to go, no matter whether the pandemic, maybe over some months or some years later. I think the future direction is to try to put the things online and don't rely on physical gathering to do the training.
Well, and I suppose, we are an international network, or even if we're in our national chapters of the network, then we're trying to reach people over large areas. So certainly having the resources, or the being able to offer that as a version online, has given people from lots and lots of different places the ability to be able to join when previously perhaps they wouldn't have been able to. I suppose the other side of that's been raised a number of times, and something you've touched on a little bit here as well, is that with that digital inclusion, there is digital exclusion as well, and there's lots and lots of people here in the UK and internationally who don't have that kind of access, and that's just one example of how the inequalities of the situation have been highlighted and been made more visible. And I suppose with that, we're kind of thinking about that from a social value lens, which we'd expect from our network. So I was just wondering, from your perspective, how do you think that the current pandemic is impacting on well-being, on inequality, and on the overall environment? We've seen this sort of visibility of the inequalities, but then conversely, there's been impacts onto the environment that have very quickly been visible, that as human activity has gone down, then nature is starting to flourish in a lot of places. So I was wondering if you've had experience of that in your context.
I think the situation is very similar. So Hong Kong, very wealthy city-state, but our inequality, our Gini coefficient is one of the highest. And you could imagine when students are told to attend online classes, many of the low-income families, the underprivileged families, it's difficult for their students, for the kids, to join the online classes. And even if you can find the internet connection, many of the low-income families live in some cubicle homes. And it's basically impossible for the kids to attend the class with other family members just sitting around them. And in any case, it won't be effective. And then I think all around the world, we talk about the essential workers. We need to continue to deliver the service. So we have the cleaner, the garbage connectors, and all these workers. They need to risk their health to deliver services to us. And then the same apply to them in relation to the protective gear. They are not provided with enough face masks and other kinds of protective gear so that they could deliver their services safely. So I think the situation is actually quite similar, or maybe even more severe in a place like Hong Kong.
With the large population and living very closely together, and the large inequality between sections of the population. I think the education piece is definitely another one that's going to be very visible now and going forwards for those that have been able to continue with their studies and access online education, and those that haven't been able to. So I mean, that does kind of look a little bit to the future, right? So the effects for those going through this process now will come to pass in the future. So I suppose, if we were looking at where we are in the pandemic, you are that little bit further ahead than us in the UK at this point in time. And I wonder, from what you're experiencing, what do you think the new normal might be? Are there things that we can learn from this crisis period? Is there things that we could do differently in the future?
I think maybe I mentioned two things. One is that we talked a little bit, we talked about the more negative things earlier, but I think there are some positive things also happening. And I mentioned I'm involved in some or I'm interested in some other global social movements. So another movement I'm interested and I'm involved is called the slow movement. So we used to follow Japanese sensei, a professor from Japan, that talk about slow is beautiful. We should work slowly, and actually it is through working slowly that you can build relationships that are deeper. And I think the current lockdown actually provided opportunities for us to sit back and then try to do things at a much slower pace. And of course, we also heard about some bad stories about maybe just domestic violence and other things happening. But one thing we in Hong Kong, we used to operate in a very, very fast pace. And then as a member of an international network, and we always like working too hard to try to trace a lot of never-ending developments in relation to the new standard or new developments. And in the past few months, I got some time to really sit down and settle and reprioritize a lot of things. And okay, so this is one thing that we should continue. We hope we could continue even after the pandemic. And then the second point I want to raise is that the Social Value International, we are it's a global movement organization wanting to change the way society account for value. But we are not as a network. We do not provide direct service to to the people. So we are like a support organization helping other entities, other sectors to to change the way they make decisions, change the way they allocate resources so as to maximize their impact. So in this pandemic, one lesson I got is that as I mentioned earlier, there are state failure, there are market failure, and then we have civil society organizations doing a lot of work for the people. And I had, kind of reflection of what should our social value network do to actually we think about our own social movement to transform the way how the society account for value and to try to incorporate externalities, try to fight inequalities. But actually we need to work closely with other civil society organization and civil society movements. And I think after the pandemic, or actually in the coming months while we go through this, we need to find some way to work closer with the civil society organizations and particularly the movement organization. We as a network already work with a lot of service providers, but for the movement organizations, if we really want to have a sustained transformation in the way our society works, I think we need to think about a collaboration between our movement with some other civil society movement who are aiming the same ultimate goal, to change the way decision making is made, to change the way resources are allocated, and change the way we account for value.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I hugely echo that point around increased collaboration, sort of just personally and through the work that we've been doing. I found people have been very giving in the information and the sharing of skills, of resources with one another. And certainly that love your point around the slow movement and being able to find time for things perhaps that we really did value before, but then being able to take those forwards and give them more priority could be something that we could do. I think there's hopefully some good positives in there, but I mean there are some scary moments happening for all of us to varying degrees and in a lot of different ways. But I was wondering, just to kind of on a final note, so we can leave on a positive note, if there's any sort of positive action or something that's made you smile during this time. You sort of shared previously about people coming together to try and get protective equipment out to communities that haven't had them. So, you know, there's been a real coming together of people and a showing of humanity during these crisis times as well. So is there anything that you could share so we can leave with a smile?
Okay, so there are stories, we can check the Facebook and see stories like people will bring spare face masks with them, and then they just will give it to some, say, the cleaner or the low-income family they happen to pump into. But maybe I can tell a story also from my Facebook page. I learned from a friend. He has a neighbor who are the ethnic minority groups in Hong Kong. I think they're from Indonesia. And so my friend who has some extra sanitizers, and actually he is kind enough to lock the door of labor of the migrant of the ethnic minority family and share with them, you know, those alcohol-based sanitizers. And it happens that the ethnic minority family, because of they're from Indonesia, and in the early months, they're able to source more face masks from their home country. And so when my friend delivered, you know, the sanitizers to them, it was quite a surprise to my friend that the labor actually offered them, you know, some extra face masks. So he had that thinking about just trying to help, you know, the ethnic minority family. But in the end, actually, his labor that got more resourceful in relation to the you know, face masks and the protective gear, that actually they're kind enough to share, you know, those equipment to my friend. So it's not kind of a heroic thing, but I think it's a very it is good that when you have a mindset to share something with your neighbor, then something good will happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a wonderful story, Terence. Thank you. And I do think it's these small acts of kindness that can improve all of our lives. And it's not just one person giving to another. It can be reciprocal, and we've all got things that we can give and share. Well, I'd like to say thank you very much for joining us today and for sharing your wonderful experience with me and with the wider network. So yeah, well, thank you very much for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure. Yeah.